Dive into all this controversy with Zack Mwekassa and what he said about Cameroon right.
Yeah, this has been a hot topic lately.
It has, and we found this really interesting video analysis by Sham Lepanzu, and he's a Congolese-Angolan guy living in Europe who has followed Mwekassa's career. Now, this video is a bit of a trip. It's like a huge stream of consciousness monologue.
Wow.
Where he's like jumping between Mwekassa to Cameroon and he throws in personal anecdotes and then like drops these serious philosophical reflection.
It's interesting how he tries to cover all of that like in one piece of content. It's like you're getting a look inside how his mind works as he's trying to understand it all.
Exactly. So for those who maybe need a refresher, Zack Mwekassa is known for being pretty outspoken.
Oh, yeah.
Especially when it comes to his criticisms of Christianity.
Right.
But he recently got himself in hot water for what a lot of people saw as hypocritical behavior. Okay.
Toward UFC champion Francis Ngannou, who's from Cameroon.
Right. And this is where, like, the whole cultural context is super important. Like, expressing condolences when someone has a loss is, like,
huge,
deeply ingrained in Cameroonian culture. It's a huge sign of respect and solidarity.
And this is where Mwekassa really messed up. So he had previously criticized Ngannou after a loss in the ring, but then publicly congratulated him after a win.
Yeah.
And on the surface, that just seems like normal sports commentary.
Sure.
But this was right after Ngannou's young son tragically died, and Mwekassa hadn't offered any condolences publicly.
And that silence was deafening.
It was.
It wasn't just a personal slight against Ngannou, but it felt like disrespect to all of Cameroon.
Totally. And so there was a ton of backlash. And Mwekassa responded with a live video. And according to our source, Lepanzu, it was completely out of character. He describes it as shocking. And unlike Mwekassa's usual intelligent self,
he basically went on a rant and ended up insulting Cameroon as a nation.
Wow.
Based on like just a few critics.
Which is like especially strange when you think about how Mwekassa always ends his videos with your brother.
Right.
It gives this feeling of like closeness.
Yeah.
You know, like he's part of the community, so his actions here are super confusing.
Yes. And that's where Lepanzu's perspective is so interesting.
Right.
He starts by talking about this complex relationship he has with Mwekassa.
Okay.
Going from like admirer to critic and disagreeing with Mwekassa's stance on Christianity.
Interesting.
That's good.
And he talks about how impressed he was by Mwekassa's intelligence and his way with words.
I know.
So you can really hear how disappointed he is when he talks about this attack on Cameroon.
Oh, absolutely. You can feel that passion when Lepanzu jumps to Cameroon's defense.
Yeah.
He talks about its rich history and the important contributions Cameroonians have made to the world, especially in things like literature, science, and sports. It's clearly very personal for him.
Yeah.
It feels like this whole Mwekassa thing sparked something bigger in Lepanzu's mind.
Yeah.
Because he goes off on this tangent about wealth and success. And he's arguing that achieving material wealth is actually a miracle.
A miracle?
He calls it a miracle, like achieving material wealth.
Wow.
It's like he's saying there's more going on than just hard work.
Like what?
You know, like maybe there's an element of destiny or luck involved. What do you think about that?
It's a very interesting perspective.
Right.
Makes you think like, are we grateful enough for the successes that we have? Should we acknowledge that they might not just be because of our efforts?
And then he goes on to contrast people who embrace minimalism with those who are like constantly flaunting their wealth. Like he brings up Mark Zuckerberg, who's worth billions, but dresses like he's going to a college lecture.
Right.
And then he compares that with people who are dripping in diamonds and designer labels and basically calls them poor mentally.
Wow.
It's
a pretty provocative statement.
It is. It's like he's saying there's this disconnect between having material wealth and actually being fulfilled.
I think so.
It's like those who are obsessed with needing validation from stuff they own are actually missing something inside.
It almost feels like Lepanzu is trying to figure out, like, can someone be super successful?
Right.
But still lack basic human decency?
It's a good question.
Is there a link between Mwekassa's wealth and fame and these hurtful actions?
It's like he's using this philosophy stuff to try and understand how someone can be so successful on the one hand, but then so flawed in another. It's a very thought-provoking point, and this is where it gets really interesting, you know? Lepanzu calls out this extravagant display of wealth as like a sign of being poor mentally.
Okay.
Almost like he's challenging what it even means to be successful.
I mean, I get what he's saying.
Yeah.
But isn't that a little judgy?
What about people who like worked really hard for their money and want to enjoy it?
Sure.
Should everybody just be walking around like in rags if they're wealthy?
That's a fair point, and it's worth thinking about.
Right.
But I think you got to remember the context here.
Yeah.
Lipanzu is speaking from this place of like deep hurt and disappointment.
Right.
He's seen this guy Mwekassa that he used to look up to act in a way that just seems so uncaring and disrespectful.
Right. So maybe he's not saying that all rich people are mentally poor, but more like there's a danger in letting that success go to your head.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like, remember, Lipanzu himself is a successful guy.
He is, yeah.
He's built a following online. He's clearly intelligent and well-spoken. He even mentions how he signs off his videos with your brother.
Oh, right, yeah.
Just like Mwekassa does.
That's true.
So it's like he's looking in the mirror, too.
Right.
You know, asking himself, what does it really mean to be successful? And how do you handle the downsides of wealth and fame?
That's a really interesting way to look at it. So it's not about, like, condemning being rich, but more about recognizing that real success is more than just material stuff.
Exactly. He seems to be pushing for like a more well-rounded idea of success.
Okay.
One that values character, humility, and respect for other people.
Yeah.
No matter their background or status.
Which brings us back to Mwekassa, who, like, based on what Pazu is saying, seems to have lost sight of those values completely.
Yeah.
Like, his success has blinded him
Yeah.
to the basic decency of offering condolences to someone grieving.
And what's crazy is that even with all this anger and disappointment, Lipanzu ends his video by asking people to forgive Mwekassa.
Wait, really?
Yeah.
Even after all that, he's still willing to forgive.
It seems so.
Wow.
He's suggesting that maybe this outburst from Mwekassa is like him losing his balance.
Okay.
Possibly because of the pressure of being in the public eye and being so successful.
That's a very generous interpretation.
It is. Makes you wonder if Lipanzu has ever felt similar things in his own life.
Yeah, it does.
It's definitely possible, and I think that's part of what makes this video so interesting to me. It's not just him commenting on Mwekassa.
Right.
It's also like a reflection on success. The problems with staying grounded.
Yeah.
And how important it is to be kind to people, even when they mess up.
For sure. And it shows how important it is to understand different cultures.
Totally.
What might seem small in one culture can be a huge deal in another.
Right. You're right.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we should always try to be aware of and respect those differences.
Especially nowadays.
Especially nowadays.
When the world is so connected.
Right.
So we've gone from this fighter's controversial comments to talking about different cultures and even philosophical questions about wealth, success, and forgiveness.
And it all came from this one passionate video from Lipanzu.
I know. It's pretty amazing.
It shows how powerful one person's voice can be.
For sure.
Starting these bigger conversations.
Yeah.
And making us question what we thought we knew.
Makes you think about how what we go through shapes how we see the world.
Yeah.
Like Lipanzu is wrestling with these big questions about success and humility because he's actually living it himself.
It's almost like he's saying, look, I've had success too.
Yeah.
And it's not always easy to stay grounded.
I know.
There's like a vulnerability there that I think people, especially those who've, you know, made it in some way, can really relate to.
It definitely makes me think about my own life.
Yeah.
And how I handle the good and bad times, you know?
Yeah.
It's a good reminder to not let it go to your head.
Right.
And remember that success isn't just about what you have, but how you treat others along the way.
Absolutely. And it's amazing that Lipanzu, after everything, still ends by saying we should forgive Mwekassa.
I know. It's pretty incredible.
So easy to just judge and condemn.
Right. Especially these days when everyone has an opinion and a place to share it. But Lipanzu chooses a different way. It chooses empathy and understanding.
It reminds us that even those who seem to have it all can still struggle with normal human flaws and insecurities.
I know.
And sometimes the most successful people
are
the ones who need kindness and compassion the most.
This deep dive has taken us on a journey.
It has.
We started with this controversial thing, explored cultural differences, and even got into deep philosophical questions about wealth success and what it means to truly be fulfilled.
And to think it all came from this one video.
I know, right?
from Shan Lapanzu.
It just shows you that sometimes the most unexpected sources can give you the most insightful ideas.
Absolutely.
So as we wrap things up, we want to leave you with one last thought.
Okay.
Could all this philosophical stuff from Lapanzu
Yeah.
be him subtly talking about his own life?
Interesting.
Is he wrestling with these questions about wealth and humility?
Yeah.
Because they're actually really personal to him.
It's a great question.
Yeah.
And it shows how powerful personal experience can be.
Totally.
It reminds us that everyone sees the world through a lens shaped by their own life. And those perspectives can help us understand even the most complicated stuff.
Well, that's a wrap on another deep dive.
It is.
We hope you enjoyed exploring these ideas with us.
We too.
Until next time, keep those minds thinking.
Yeah, for sure.